She thought she was saving a beggar's life, but the old woman she rescued held the power to either unite a broken family or destroy it forever. The alley smelled like garbage and regret. Pearl clutched her grocery bags tighter, cursing herself for taking the shortcut. 6 months pregnant, alone, walking through the roughest neighborhood in the city because she wanted to save 15 minutes. Stupid. Absolutely stupid. She was about to turn back when she heard it. A scream. Thin, desperate, old. Pearl froze. 20 feet ahead, 2 men circled a figure huddled against a dumpster. An elderly woman, frail, dressed in rags that might have once been nice clothes. One man grabbed her arm, the other ripped at the bag clutched to her chest. "Give it up, Grandma." "Please, please, it's all I have." Pearl's hand moved to her belly. The smart thing was to run, call the police, let someone else handle it. But the woman's eyes met hers across the alley, blue, piercing, terrified. And Pearl thought of her own mother, dead 3 years now, alone at the end because Pearl couldn't afford the bus fare to say goodbye. She didn't think. She moved. "Hey!" The men spun around. Pearl was already pulling the pepper spray from her purse, the one her boss insisted all staff carry. "Back off, now!" The taller one laughed. "Look at this, pregnant lady playing hero." "I said back off." He stepped toward her. Pearl sprayed. The man screamed, clawing at his face. His partner lunged. Pearl sidestepped, sprayed again, and watched him crumple beside his friend. "Run!" She grabbed the old woman's arm. "Come on!" They stumbled out of the alley together. Pearl half dragging the stranger until they reached the main street. Lights, people, safety. The woman collapsed against a bus stop bench, gasping. "Thank you." Her voice was hoarse, refined, wrong for the rags she wore. "You didn't have to. Anyone would have." "No." The woman's eyes locked onto hers. "They wouldn't." Pearl studied her rescuee while they caught their breath. Beneath the dirt and tattered clothes, something didn't fit. The woman's posture, her diction, the way she held herself like someone used to being obeyed. And around her neck, barely visible beneath a threadbare scarf, hung a gold locket. Old, expensive, completely out of place. "I'm Pearl," she said carefully. "What's your name?" The woman hesitated. Something flickered in those blue eyes. Fear, maybe, or calculation. "Celeste," she finally said. Just Celeste." Pearl nodded slowly, but she couldn't shake the feeling that this woman was lying, and she couldn't stop staring at that locket. "Hi, my beautiful family. Thank you so much for showing me so much love and support. Listen, if you're already hooked on today's story and you can't wait to hear what happens, then do these 2 things right now, like and subscribe, so you catch tomorrow's equally amazing story. Let's continue." Pearl Ashmore had learned early that survival meant invisibility. Growing up in foster care taught her that. 16 homes in 18 years. Some decent. Some nightmares she still couldn't talk about. By the time she aged out of the system, Pearl had exactly $47, a GED, and a promise she'd made to herself. Never depend on anyone. Ever. She kept that promise for 8 years. Worked her way through community college. Got a job at a cleaning service. Saved every penny. Built a life that was small but hers. Then she met Jonah. Jonah Whitmore was charming, attentive, everything Pearl never knew she wanted. He swept into her life like a storm. Flowers, dinners, promises of forever. For the first time, Pearl let someone in. Let herself believe she deserved happiness. 6 months later, she was pregnant. 2 weeks after that, Jonah vanished, cleared out his apartment, disconnected his phone, left nothing behind except a growing child and a note that said, "I'm not ready. I'm sorry." Pearl didn't cry. Crying was for people who could afford to fall apart. Instead, she found a new job. The Fabry estate was unlike anything Pearl had ever seen. 30 rooms, manicured gardens. Yeah, staff who moved like ghosts and spoke in whispers. And at the center of it all, Tommaso Fabri, 34 years old, dark hair, darker eyes, jaw sharp enough to cut steel. He was handsome in the way dangerous things are handsome. Beautiful and terrifying at once. Pearl knew what he was. Everyone did. The Fabry family had controlled the city's underworld for 3 generations. Drugs, weapons, politicians, everything flowed through Tommaso's hands. She should have run the moment she saw his face, but the pay was triple her last job. The hours were flexible, and they didn't ask questions about her pregnancy. So Pearl stayed, cleaned his house, kept her head down, pretended she didn't notice the men with guns or the meetings that ran until 3 a.m. invisible. Just the way she liked it. Except Tommaso noticed her. Not in the way men usually noticed her. Hungry, predatory. Something different. He watched her sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking. Asked the head housekeeper about her background, made sure her room was the warmest in the servants' quarters. Once she'd found a package of prenatal vitamins on her nightstand. No note, no explanation. Pearl told herself it meant nothing. Rich men did strange things. But sometimes their eyes met across a room, and something in his gaze made her forget how to breathe. Now, sitting beside a mysterious beggar who spoke like royalty, Pearl's carefully built walls felt thinner than ever. "Where do you live?" she asked Celeste. "I can call someone." "There's no one to call." "Family?" The old woman's face tightened. "I had a son, once." "Had?" "He thinks I'm dead." Celeste's voice dropped. It's better that way." Pearl stared at her. The locket caught the streetlight, gold gleaming against dirty fabric. "Why would your son think you're dead?" Celeste didn't answer, but her hand moved to the locket, pressing it against her chest like a shield, and Pearl realized she wasn't looking at a beggar at all. She was looking at a ghost. Pearl couldn't leave Celeste on the street. Every instinct screamed to walk away. Mind your business. Stay invisible. But the old woman was shaking, pale, clearly in no condition to survive another night alone. "Come with me," Pearl heard herself say. "Just for tonight. You need rest." Celeste's eyes widened. "You don't know me." "I know you almost died in that alley." Pearl took her arm gently. "One night. Food, a bath. Then you can disappear again if you want." Something broke in Celeste's expression. Gratitude, grief, something ancient and heavy. "You remind me of someone," she whispered. "Someone I loved very much." Pearl didn't ask who. She couldn't take Celeste to the Fabry estate. Too many questions. Instead, Pearl brought her to the small apartment she still kept across town, a safety net she'd never surrendered. While Celeste showered, Pearl made soup. Simple, warm, the kind of meal that healed more than hunger. She was stirring the pot when she noticed Celeste's bag on the table. It had fallen open during their escape. Papers spilled across the surface. Old photographs, documents, letters. Pearl told herself not to look. She looked anyway. The first photograph stopped her heart. A young woman, beautiful, dark-haired, elegant, holding a baby boy. The woman wore the same gold locket now hanging around Celeste's neck. Pearl flipped the photo over, handwriting on the back. "Tommaso, age 1. My beautiful son." The room tilted. Pearl grabbed the next document. A death certificate. Celeste Maria Fabry. Deceased 10 years ago. But Celeste Maria Fabry was currently in Pearl's shower, very much alive. "You found it." Pearl spun around. Celeste stood in the bathroom doorway, wrapped in a towel, looking older than she had in the alley, smaller, more fragile. "You're his mother." Pearl's voice shook. "Tommaso's mother." "Yes." "You're supposed to be dead." "I know." "Why?" The question exploded from Pearl's chest. "He mourns you. I've seen the portrait in his study. He lights a candle every Sunday." "Why would you let him believe—" "Because I had to." Celeste crossed to the table, gathering the scattered documents with trembling hands. "Because staying dead was the only way to keep him alive." Pearl stared at her. "I don't understand." "You will." Celeste looked up, eyes filled with decades of pain. "But first you have to decide, are you going to tell him you found me?" The question hung between them like a blade. Pearl's hand moved to her belly, to her baby, to the man who might be more than just her employer. What was she supposed to do with a secret this big? Pearl didn't sleep that night. She sat across from Celeste in the tiny apartment, listening to a story that sounded like madness, but felt like truth. Celeste Maria Fabry had been the matriarch of the family for 22 years, beloved wife, devoted mother, while the one person who kept the violence from consuming everything. Then her husband died. Rocco was killed by a rival family, Celeste explained, voice hollow. The Marchetti clan, they wanted our territory, our ports, everything we'd built. What happened? War. The word came out like poison. Tommaso was 24, too young, too angry. He wanted blood, and he got it. The war lasted 2 years, bodies on both sides, alliances shattered. The city became a battlefield, and Tommaso became something his mother didn't recognize. "He was so gentle as a boy," Celeste whispered. "He used to bring me flowers from the garden, cried when his dog died. But after Rocco," she shook her head, "the softness disappeared. He became the weapon the family needed." That's not unusual. Grief changes people. This was different. Celeste's eyes darkened. Tommaso made a deal with people I'd spent my whole life protecting him from, people who wanted him to become something unforgivable. What kind of deal? The kind that cost your soul. Celeste discovered the truth by accident. A meeting she wasn't supposed to witness, names she wasn't supposed to hear. Her own son, negotiating with the very people who had ordered his father's murder. "He didn't know," Celeste said quickly. "Tommaso thought he was making an alliance, building power, but the Marchettis were using him, playing him, and the price of their partnership—" "What was the price?" Celeste was quiet for a long moment. "Me." Pearl's blood ran cold. "They wanted you dead? They wanted leverage, control. If they had me, they had Tommaso." Celeste's voice cracked. "So I made a choice. I staged my death, disappeared, let my son believe I was gone. To protect him? To free him?" Tears slipped down the old woman's cheeks. "If I was dead, they had nothing to hold over him. He could fight back, break free." "Did he?" Celeste nodded slowly. "He destroyed the Marchettis within a year, rebuilt the family, became more powerful than his father ever was." Pearl absorbed this. The man she'd watched from across ballrooms, the man who left vitamins on her nightstand, the man with eyes like winter storms. He'd become a monster to avenge a mother who wasn't even dead. "Does he know?" Pearl asked. "Any of it?" "No, and he can't." Celeste grabbed Pearl's hands. "Promise me." "He can never know I'm alive," Pearl wanted to promise. I wanted to protect this broken woman who had sacrificed everything for her son. But she thought of Tommaso's face when he lit that candle every Sunday, the grief he carried like armor, the loneliness she recognized because she wore it too. Could she really keep this secret? Could she live with herself if she didn't? Pearl returned to the Fabry estate the next morning carrying a secret heavier than her pregnant belly. She moved through her duties mechanically, dusting, folding, pretending everything was normal. But her mind was 3 miles away, in a tiny apartment where a ghost waited for answers. She'd promised Celeste 1 week to figure out what to do. Pearl didn't have 1 week. Tommaso found her in the library that afternoon. She was polishing a shelf when his voice came from behind her. Low, controlled, dangerous. Where were you last night?" Pearl's hand froze on the wood. "Excuse me?" "You didn't sleep in your quarters," the night guard noticed. She turned slowly. Tommaso stood in the doorway, arms crossed, expression unreadable. But his eyes, those dark winter eyes, burned with something she couldn't name. "I have an apartment," she said carefully. "In the city. Sometimes I stay there." "Why?" "Because it's mine." The answer hung between them. Tommaso stepped closer. "You're 6 months pregnant, living in a dangerous city, working for a dangerous man." His voice dropped. "And you're keeping secrets." Pearl's heart pounded. "Everyone has secrets. Not from me. Not in my house. I'm your maid, Mr. Fabry, not your prisoner." Something flickered in his expression. Hurt, maybe, or frustration. He closed the distance between them until Pearl could smell his cologne, cedar and something darker. "You're more than that," he said quietly. And you know it. Pearl couldn't breathe. I don't know what you mean. Yes, you do. His hand rose, almost touching her cheek, then stopped, dropped. I've watched you for months, Pearl. The way you move through this house like you're ready to run. The way you flinch when someone raises their voice. The way you protect that child inside you like the whole world is trying to take it. Tears burned behind her eyes. Why do you care? Because I recognize it. Tommaso's voice cracked. Just barely. Just enough. The loneliness, the fear, the walls built so high no one can climb them. He stepped back. The spell broke. I won't force your secrets from you, he said. Yeah, but know this. Whatever you're hiding, I will find out. And when I do, I hope you'll trust me enough to explain. He left without another word. Pearl stood frozen, heart racing, terrified, and moved in equal measure. That night she returned to the apartment. Celeste was pacing when she arrived, agitated, clutching her locket like a lifeline. Someone followed you, the old woman hissed. A black car. It circled the block twice before leaving. Pearl's stomach dropped. Tommaso's men? Worse. Celeste's face was pale. The Marchettis, they're back. That's impossible. You said Tommaso destroyed them. He destroyed their leadership, not their heirs. Celeste grabbed Pearl's arms. Salvatore Marchetti, Rocco's killer's grandson. He's been rebuilding in the shadows, waiting, and now he knows I'm alive. How? I don't know. But if he finds me, if he tells Tommaso before I can explain, everything falls apart. Celeste nodded grimly. And you, my dear, are now caught in the middle. Pearl sank into a chair, hand pressed to her belly. She'd tried to help a beggar. Now she was trapped between a grieving son, a hidden mother, and an enemy who wanted them both dead. What do we do? She whispered. Celeste knelt before her, taking Pearl's hands. We tell Tommaso, together, before Salvatore can twist the truth. The old woman's eyes glistened. It's time my son learned his mother isn't a ghost. Pearl looked at this woman, broken, brave, still fighting after a decade in the shadows. Tomorrow, Pearl said. We tell him tomorrow. She just prayed they'd survive the night. Co-pilot said, #Part 6, darkest hour. Tomorrow never came. Jam Pearl, Part 6, darkest hour. Tomorrow never came. Pearl woke at 3 a.m. to the sound of breaking glass. Not from her apartment, from the hallway. Footsteps. Heavy, multiple, coming fast. Celeste! Pearl scrambled from the couch, grabbing the old woman's arm. We have to go, now! But the door burst open before they could move. 3 men, masks, guns, and behind them, a 4th figure, unmasked, smiling. Hello, grandmother. Salvatore Marchetti stepped into the apartment like he owned it. I've been looking for you for a very long time. Salvatore was young, maybe 30, handsome in a cruel way, sharp cheekbones, cold smile, eyes that held no warmth. He looked at Celeste like she was a trophy. 10 years, he said softly. 10 years you've been hiding, letting your son believe you were dead. Very clever. How did you find me? Celeste's voice was steady, but Pearl could feel her shaking. You got careless. Salvatore glanced at Pearl. Your pregnant friend here led my men straight to your door. Should have stayed invisible, old woman. Pearl's blood ran cold. Her shortcut through the alley, the robbery that wasn't random, the car that circled the block. She'd been bait, and she never even knew. What do you want? Pearl demanded, stepping in front of Celeste. Salvatore laughed. Brave little maid. Tommaso's taste has improved. I'm nobody to him. Lie. Salvatore stepped closer. My people watch that estate. They see how he looks at you, how he protects you. His smile sharpened. Your leverage, just like her. He gestured to his men. Take them both. Pearl fought, kicked, screamed. A hand covered her mouth. Something sharp pricked her neck. And then, darkness. She woke in a warehouse, cold concrete, flickering lights, the smell of rust and fear. Pearl's hands were bound behind her back. Celeste sat beside her, similarly restrained, blood trickling from a cut on her forehead. "Are you okay?" Pearl whispered. "I'm old. I've survived worse." Celeste's eyes were fierce despite the fear. "The baby?" Pearl shifted carefully, felt the familiar flutter inside her. "Still there, still fighting." "Like its mother?" Salvatore appeared an hour later. He crouched before them, casual and cruel. "I've sent a message to Tommaso," he said. "His beloved mother, alive. His precious maid, taken. If he wants you back, he comes alone, unarmed, to the docks at midnight." "He'll kill you," Pearl spat. "He'll try," Salvatore stood. But when he learns his mother has been hiding 3 blocks from his estate for a year, watching him grieve, letting him suffer, do you think he'll still want to save her?" Celeste flinched like she'd been struck. "The truth destroys, ladies." Salvatore smiled. "And tonight, Tommaso Fabri learns exactly how much his mother's love cost him." He walked away, leaving them alone in the cold. Pearl turned to Celeste. "He doesn't know the whole truth about why you left, about the Marchettis using you as leverage." "Will it matter?" Celeste's voice broke. "I abandoned my son, let him believe I was dead, watched him become hard and cold because he thought he'd lost everything." "You did it to save him." "Did I? Or did I do it to save myself?" Tears slipped down the old woman's cheeks. "I was afraid, Pearl. Afraid of what he'd become. Afraid he'd hate me for knowing the truth about his alliance. So I ran, and I called it sacrifice." Pearl had no answer, because she understood. She'd run from her own pain too, built walls, called them protection. But walls didn't just keep danger out, they kept love out too. Midnight approached. Pearl closed her eyes and prayed. For her baby, for Celeste, for the broken man walking into a trap. And somewhere in the darkness, she heard footsteps. Tommaso was coming. Tommaso Fabri didn't come alone. He came with fury. The warehouse doors exploded inward, not from a battering ram, but from the armored SUV that crashed through them. Men poured out like shadows. Gunfire erupted. Salvatore's guards scattered. Pearl pressed herself against Celeste, shielding the old woman with her body. "Stay down!" she screamed over the chaos. Then she saw him. Tommaso moved through the violence like death itself. No hesitation, no fear. Every step deliberate, every shot precise. Men fell around him, but his eyes searched the warehouse, hunting, until they found her. "Pearl!" He was beside her in seconds, cutting her bonds with a knife that appeared from nowhere. "Are you hurt? The baby va? We're fine. We're fine." Pearl grabbed his arm. "Tommaso, listen to me." But he'd already seen Celeste. The world stopped. Tommaso stared at his mother like she was a hallucination. "No," the word came out broken. "You're dead. I buried you. Tommaso," Celeste's voice cracked. "My son." 10 years. His voice rose. 10 years I mourned you, lit candles, visited your grave, and you were... He couldn't finish. "I can explain." "Explain?" Tommaso laughed. A terrible sound, almost hollow and sharp. "Explain why you let me believe I was alone. Explain why you watched me suffer and did nothing. I was protecting you." "From what?" "From them." Celeste pointed toward the chaos. "The Marchettis. They wanted to use me to control you. If I stayed dead, you were free." "Free?" Tommaso's composure shattered. "I became a monster because of you. Every terrible thing I did because I had nothing left to lose." Pearl stepped between them. "Stop." Both turned to her, the grieving son, the hidden mother, united only in their shock. "I know you're angry," Pearl said to Tommaso. "You have every right to be. But right now, Salvatore Marchetti is escaping. And if he gets away, this never ends." Tommaso's jaw clenched. His eyes flickered to Celeste, a decade of pain battling against something deeper. "Oh, she's right," Celeste whispered. "Finish this, then hate me if you must." Tommaso stared at his mother for a long moment. Then he turned and disappeared into the smoke. Pearl found Celeste crying when the gunfire stopped. "He'll never forgive me," the old woman sobbed. "I saw it in his eyes." "You saw pain," Pearl said gently. "Pain isn't the same as hate." How would you know? Pearl sat beside her, hand resting on her belly. Because I spent my whole life angry at people who abandoned me. Foster parents, my mother, the father of this baby. She exhaled slowly. But anger fades. Eventually you have to choose. Stay bitter or find a way forward. Celeste looked at her. What did you choose? I'm still choosing, every day. Pearl took her hand. And so will Tommaso. Give him time. Tommaso returned 20 minutes later. His shirt was torn. Blood on his knuckles, not his own. Behind him, his men dragged Salvatore Marchetti in chains. It's over, Tommaso said flatly. The Marchettis are finished, for good this time. He stopped in front of his mother. The anger was still there, but beneath it, something else, something fragile. We need to talk, he said. Not here, not now, but soon. Celeste nodded, fresh tears falling. Whenever you're ready. Tommaso's gaze shifted to Pearl, softened. Thank you, he said quietly, for protecting her, for finding her, for... He stopped, swallowed. For everything. Pearl nodded. Words felt inadequate. Tommaso extended his hand. Pearl took it, and together they walked out of the warehouse into the first light of dawn. The conversation happened 3 days later. And now Tommaso had installed Celeste in the estate's east wing, comfortable but guarded. He wasn't ready to trust her, wasn't ready to forgive, but he wasn't ready to lose her again either. Pearl understood. Some wounds needed time before they could be touched. She was folding linens in the upstairs hallway when Tommaso passed her, heading toward his mother's room. Wish me luck, he muttered. You don't need luck. Pearl caught his arm. You need honesty, both of you. He looked at her hand on his sleeve, didn't pull away. Will you come with me? The question surprised them both. She's your mother, and you're the reason she's still alive. His eyes held hers. Please. Pearl nodded. Okay. Celeste was sitting by the window when they entered. She looked healthier now, clean clothes, color in her cheeks, but her eyes carried the same haunted weight they'd held in that alley. Tommaso. She stood. Pearl, thank you for coming. Tommaso remained by the door. Talk? I'm listening. Celeste took a breath, and finally told him everything. The full truth was uglier than Pearl had imagined. Rocco Fabri's death hadn't been random. It was orchestrated by people inside their own organization, traitors who'd made deals with the Marchettis. When Celeste discovered the conspiracy, she'd planned to expose them, but they discovered her first. They gave me a choice, Celeste said, voice hollow. Disappear quietly, or watch them kill you. Tommaso's fists clenched. You should have told me. You were 24, grieving, furious. If I told you the truth, you would have gone after them immediately, and they would have slaughtered you. So you chose to break me instead. I chose to keep you alive. Celeste's composure cracked. Every day for 10 years I watched from the shadows, watched you become powerful, watched you build something your father never could. And yes, I watched you become hard, cold, alone. Tears streamed down her face. That is my punishment, Tommaso. Seeing what my choice cost you, living with it every single day. Silence filled the room. Pearl wanted to speak, to bridge the gap, but this wasn't her moment. Finally, Tommaso moved. He crossed to his mother slowly, stopped in front of her. I don't know how to forgive you, he said quietly. I don't know if I ever will. Celeste nodded, accepting the blow. But Tommaso's voice cracked. You're my mother. Ew, and I've spent 10 years wishing I could see you one more time. He opened his arms. Celeste fell into them, sobbing. Pearl slipped out of the room, giving them privacy. Some healing needed to happen without witnesses. Tommaso found her on the balcony an hour later. The sun was setting. Pearl stood at the railing, watching the sky turn gold. Thank you, he said from behind her. For what? For pushing me, for being there, for... He moved beside her. For seeing me when no one else did. Pearl smiled softly. You saw me first, did I? The vitamins, the warm room, the way you always knew where I was." She turned to face him. "You've been watching me for months." Guilty. No shame in his voice, just truth. "You walked into my house like a ghost, Pearl. Invisible to everyone. But not to me." "Why?" "Because you reminded me of someone I lost." His hand rose, brushing her cheek. "Someone kind, brave, completely unbreakable." "Your mother." "No." His eyes held hers. "Myself." Before I forgot who I was. Pearl's heart pounded. "I'm a pregnant maid, Tommaso. I have nothing. I am nothing." "You're everything." He stepped closer. "You saved my mother. You forced me to face the truth. And you—" His voice dropped. "You make me want to be better." "Better how?" "The kind of man who deserves you." He kissed her, gentle at first, tentative, like he was asking permission. Pearl answered by pulling him closer. 3 months later, Ivy Rose Fabry came into the world on a Sunday morning. 6 pounds, 4 ounces, soft brown curls, lungs that announced her arrival to the entire maternity ward. And Pearl held her daughter for the first time and understood, finally, completely, what love without conditions felt like. Tommaso stood beside the bed, utterly undone. "She's perfect," he whispered. "Absolutely perfect." "She has your stubbornness already." Pearl smiled through exhausted tears, refused to come out until she was ready. "Smart girl." Tommaso leaned down, pressing a kiss to Pearl's forehead, then to Ivy's, just like her mother. The estate transformed after Ivy arrived. Laughter echoed through hallways that had known only silence. Baby blankets appeared on leather sofas. Celeste, Nonna now, could be found every afternoon in the nursery, singing Italian lullabies that made even the guards soften. The healing between mother and son wasn't complete. Perhaps it never would be. But it was happening, slowly, painfully, beautifully. They ate dinners together now, shared stories Pearl had never heard, argued sometimes, forgave often. Family, Pearl learned, wasn't about perfection. It was about choosing each other despite the imperfections. Tommaso proposed on Ivy's 3-month birthday. No grand gestures, no crowds, just the two of them on the balcony where they'd shared their first real conversation. The city glittering below, their daughter asleep in the nursery. "I had a speech prepared," Tommaso said, pulling a small box from his pocket. "Something about destiny and second chances. But honestly—" "Honestly what?" "Honestly, I just want to spend the rest of my life with you." He opened the box. A simple diamond. Elegant. Perfect. "Not because you saved my mother, not because you changed me, but because when I'm with you, I finally feel like myself." Pearl's eyes filled with tears. "That's a pretty good speech. Is that a yes?" She kissed him instead of answering. It was definitely a yes. The wedding happened in spring, small, intimate, just family, and the few people who had earned the right to witness it. Pearl wore ivory, simple, elegant, nothing like the rags she'd once owned. Celeste stood beside her as an honorary mother of the bride. Ivy, now 6 months old, was carried down the aisle by her grandmother, gurgling happily at the attention. Tommaso waited at the altar, looking at Pearl like she'd hung the moon. "You're beautiful," he said when she reached him. "You're biased." "Absolutely." He took her hands. "And I'll be biased every day for the rest of my life." The vows were simple. "I spent my life building walls," Pearl said. Believing I didn't deserve love, didn't deserve family. Then I defended a stranger in an alley and found both." She looked at Celeste, at Ivy, at the man before her. "I promise to keep choosing you. Every day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Tommaso squeezed her hands. "I spent my life becoming a monster," he said, believing that power was all that mattered. Then a pregnant maid looked at me like I was just a man, and I remembered who I wanted to be. His voice cracked. "I promise to protect you, to cherish you, to love you and our daughter with everything I have." They kissed. The small crowd erupted in applause, and Pearl Ashmore, once invisible, once alone, became Pearl Fabry. 1 year later, Ivy took her first steps in the garden. Tommaso caught her when she stumbled. Celeste clapped from her chair nearby. Pearl watched from the doorway, hand resting on her belly, where a second miracle was already growing. She thought about that alley, that desperate scream. The choice to help when running would have been easier. One act of kindness, that's all it took. One moment of courage had given her everything she never dared to dream of. Moral of the story: the people who seem invisible often carry the greatest strength. Kindness is never wasted, even when it's risky, even when it's hard. Sometimes the strangers we help become the family we need. And sometimes the courage to care for others is what finally teaches us to let ourselves be cared for too.